Alright, here we go. Welcome back again, Redblurr Gamers. I've shifted the camera around again slightly. So hopefully it is in a position where I can comfortably operate it. As you can see, we have the base we were working on. Earthshade has been put down. I've been contemplating whether or not I'm using known oil or if I'm going in with something else. I do have a blue, but I don't think it's going to be correct or appropriate for this current predicament of service. I think we're going to go in with the known oil over the rocks to slightly darken up what I've done. As you can see, getting this in against the current colour that is there, just to bring it back down slightly from what I had previously put in place. So we'll get all this done, and that should dull our rock dirt base down, giving it a little bit more of a natural look, and then we will eventually go in and hit it with a dry brushing once all this has dried. So out of our way, sorted, one lot of rocks down, known oil back in its place, and we shall digress and move on. We've got this head, which I hope you can see. It is the head of the gentleman that I had been painting and putting together. Face is obviously done. It's gone over with a few bits and pieces. I will attempt now to try and get some eyeballs on there. Guaranteed this is going to probably be a mistake. Get some paint on our wet palette, and we shall attempt very carefully to paint in some holes, which when we look at, this is going to be fun. Again, about the best I can do for that, given that I am horribly, terribly bad at painting eyeballs. We will also go in here on our head of our Commissar and do the same thing, hopefully without making too much of a mistake. Eyeballs, at least that's done. I guess the question is now, what colour am I going to go in and paint these patches with? Actually, I probably should back into painting the pouches on the belt, which we all know that we're using a different brown for this, more of a crackstone layer is what I'm using, the old crackstone, to try and get the colour in that I'm after. And hoping that this, just works the way I'm anticipating, maybe. Get in as close as we can. We will actually try and paint that strap that's there a different colour, just to try and differentiate between everything. As I said, I'm trying to push myself a little harder, further, trying stuff that I've never, I don't normally tend to paint in this too thin coats styling. I tend to be a lot more slap chop, which is the method that I have used for all of my army so far. Well, armies to a degree. I did make some changes to the way I did paint my towel. I spent a little bit more time doing things like dry brushing and then working towards panel lining, trying to get colour in different facets while my army is white, which does kind of make things a little bit easier, to be honest, with in terms of colour and how colour goes on. I tried very hard to do a few different things. As I said, mainly dry brushing, as I never really pushed that particular style before. I think I'm doing a shit job right now at the moment on this. I think I need to put some more water. In my brush and try and, there we go, loosen up the paint again so that I can try and get it on there. There we go. And then we've got one more little pouch here, which we will endeavour to also get done right now. As you can see, I'm trying, as I said, trying a new, I know it's not new for everyone else, but it's definitely new for me in terms of the way that I am painting. I know this is the tried and true tested method that everyone seems to use. And I will say, this being very cautious with the right size brush is, well, it's making me semi-nervous that I'm really stuffing this up. I feel quite good the fact that I am doing some sort of job that seems to be acceptable. It looks pretty good to my eye. Just going to touch up old mate here because it looks like he is definitely not quite painted in the right spots with his few missing bits and pieces on his body. Well, I shouldn't really say body, I should more say his armour panelling. As you can see, I have gone in and painted with I'm not sure what's going on there, but let's get some very carefully trying to build up the colour layers over what I laid down via brush, which was very like aggressive, straight from the pot, not a huge deal of being smart about anything, really just trying to blast it on, which I think may have been a bad mistake, but we live and we learn, and we intend to improve and get better. So as you can see, bits and pieces are going well. I've actually got to paint the back of that guy's head, don't I? That's fun. Let's switch colours again. I've got some Raglan Flesh Shade here, which is not Raglan Flesh Shade, it is it should have been Canadian. Should definitely have been KDM base. There we go. That is, oh, hands. We forgot all about his hands. Which makes things a little bit more interesting because we get this on his little fingers and hands. I'll try and not get that on the... And then I did, of course I did, exactly what happens to me. Pick that up. Alright, let's try and get it on his fingers without really making too much of a mess. And then we will be one step closer because I'm really pushing, I guess not pushing, but really trying to get this done the best way I can. I don't know whether or not this is going to actually turn out and look good. I'm hoping that I will have done a good enough job to at least be given a pat on the back when I lost the blade. Submit this for my painting comp. First time I've entered one. Definitely first time I've, as I said, painted in this particular fashion. It's not something that I've done before or do a lot of. But I will admit that I am thoroughly enjoying this, the premise of this, because I'm trying extremely hard to be extremely delicate with what I'm doing so that I really don't bleed the colours too much. So there's not a huge deal of colour being in too many places. I do need to figure out what colour I'm going to make. I think I'll go with black here on this band. I'm not sure what I'm going to do here. I could do a dull. I could do black as well, but I'm on this paneling around his arm here. I may go into the layer carkstone, which is what the colour of these guys are. I do need to get my Wraithbone. No, it's out here already, isn't it? That Wraithbone, lovely. Start trying to paint particular parts. Again, we will attempt to paint the backpack. Really not backpack per se, more straps. Giving us more of a bonus is that also with these straps is the same colour pouches that they would have had when they were in. This is when I say they, I'm talking about the soldiers in the Second World War, the British, the Aussies. I've seen photos of how this stuff is supposed to look in terms of colour scheme. So we'll get in there, and we are slowly but surely making our way through getting a lot of this dealt with in a way that I'm going to be proud of this actually, because this is me taking a fair chunk of time to actually pursue painting this in the right direction. I guess right direction is probably not the right word. More pursue painting this in a way that's actually, stable, traditional, which again, people don't have to paint in a traditional manner. They can paint however they like. but I definitely am going to push myself to be very much trying harder to try and do this in a fashion that looks good, because I would like it to be exceptionally good. It's allowing me to move around and get some painting done on this gentleman. As I said, also painting the pouches on their belts the same colour as the belt, because that's the colour they were. This is supposed to be like a deserty kind of camo. Well, they never really had camo back then. It was more of a, they chose a colour that was as close to sand as possible, that for the soldiers would not betray them in terms of when they were in the desert, in places like Egypt or Jordan or Syria, Tobruk, to be able to hide in plain sight, so that the Germans struggled to see what they were doing and who they were, and couldn't tell whether or not there was enemy out there to be shooting at. So I'm just attempting to get this completed in that mannerism, so that it looks somewhat, I guess you could say, authentic. And that's what I hope for. I hope to make it look as authentic as possible. Have that ability to make it look somewhat real. Allowing for something cool to be, I guess designed is the right word, and painted. And if that's what it is, and that's how lucky I get, then I'm going to be pretty happy, because I really want these to look as good as they can. I know that it's going to take a little bit of time. There is a fair squad of Kazakhans over the back there that some have come off. I've managed to get arms off some of them. I've got a, pretty sure I've painted him twice to get his, it looks like everything's painted with the correct stone, so I could actually then, I can actually jump in and begin to paint again his straps, so that I'm working towards him looking as accurate as possible. I do definitely need to figure out how to paint the berets. They were a sky blue kind of colour, a sand colour. Sorry, I should say not sky blue. I think originally they started out as a baby sky blue, and they didn't like them, and the boys had them replaced with something less obvious that didn't stick out as much on the battlefield, which made things, again, more interesting for them, because it meant that now, while they're in the desert, it was a hell of a lot harder to see what was going on with them, because even their hats and caps, which they wore rather than helmets, didn't really portray their position to the enemy, and because their belts were like a tanny white, which I think the closest colour can actually come up with is this wraith bone. That also in a sand coloured environment in a desert would not have stood out very brightly, making it oops, I accidentally wiped that off. Would have made it a hell of a lot harder for anyone to actually officially see one of these gentlemen while they were hiding or doing what they were doing. So yeah, so as you can see, I'm just going through and doing this little bit of painting to get my Kazakin to their next particular position, which will be somewhat entertaining for me and somewhat possibly slightly hard to control. I don't want to make any mistakes per se. I'm trying my best to get colour on without it bleeding from one colour into another. Making sure I've got nice crisp lines where there needs to be nice crisp lines, and colouring in items to match the right colour for the time period. Well, there we go. That video, it's gone on for a little bit, but that's okay. Bit of chatting, a little bit of painting, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.